The entire gathering hall fell silent the moment Alpha Rider's hand struck Ava Nightshade across the face. The sharp crack echoed against the stone walls, silencing hundreds of wolves gathered beneath the towering moon banners of the Silver Crescent Pack. Warriors, elders, servants, and ranked members stood frozen in disbelief as Ava staggered backward, barely managing to keep herself from collapsing. A crimson mark slowly appeared across her pale cheek. No one moved. No one spoke. The young Omega healer lowered her gaze, not because she accepted the humiliation, but because years of suffering had taught her one painful lesson. Showing weakness before a cruel crowd only invited greater cruelty. Tonight, however, felt different. Tonight, something in the air had changed. Perhaps it was the violent storm gathering beyond the mountains. Perhaps it was the uneasy whisper of the wind slipping through the enormous hall. Or perhaps it was the strange sensation pulsing beneath Ava's skin since dawn, a feeling she had been unable to explain. Standing at the center of the ceremonial platform, Alpha Rider looked down at her with cold disappointment. "This pack welcomed you, fed you, and allowed you to live among us despite your status," the Alpha declared, his voice carrying effortlessly throughout the hall. "And this is how you repay our kindness, by stealing from your Luna." A wave of angry murmurs swept through the crowd. "Thief. She should be banished. I always knew there was something suspicious about that girl." Ava clenched her trembling hands at her sides. For 5 years, she had served this pack as its healer. She had spent countless sleepless nights tending wounded warriors after rogue attacks. She had saved pups from deadly fevers. She had cared for elders abandoned by their own families. Yet not a single voice rose in her defense. Not one. At the foot of the platform stood Luna Serena, dressed in elegant silver robes that shimmered beneath the moonstones decorating the chamber. Tears glistened in her eyes as she dramatically pressed a hand against her chest. "My mother's heirloom disappeared from my chambers this morning," Serena said softly. "I wanted to believe Ava could never do such a thing. I truly did, but the necklace was discovered among her belongings." Gasps erupted throughout the hall. Several warriors stepped forward carrying an ornate velvet box. Inside rested a magnificent silver necklace adorned with a rare moon crystal, the sacred heirloom belonging to the Luna bloodline. Ava stared at the necklace in horror. "Never seen that before," she said, struggling to steady her voice. "Someone planted it." Her words only provoked laughter. "Enough lies," an elder snapped. "Disgraced this pack. You should be grateful the Alpha isn't ordering your execution." Ava slowly lifted her eyes toward Alpha Rider. For the briefest moment, she searched his face for doubt, for hesitation, for anything that suggested he believed in her innocence. She found nothing. What made the betrayal unbearable was that Rider knew her better than anyone. Since childhood, they had grown up within the same territory. He knew she would never steal. He knew she had devoted her entire life to serving others. And still, he had chosen to condemn her without question. "Evidence is undeniable," Rider said firmly. "A thief has no place in the Silver Crescent Pack." Ava's heart shattered, not because of the accusation, not because of the humiliation, but because she finally understood something she had refused to accept for years. She had never truly belonged here. "Well," Ava whispered. Her quiet response surprised everyone. No tears escaped her eyes, no desperate pleas followed. She simply raised her chin and faced the crowd with a dignity none of them expected. "If my years of loyalty mean nothing," she said, "then there is nothing left for me to defend." An uncomfortable silence settled across the gathering hall. Several pack members shifted uneasily. Even some warriors lowered their heads. For the first time, guilt began creeping into the room. Luna Serena noticed it immediately. Panic flashed across her beautiful features. Ava was supposed to beg. She was supposed to cry. She was supposed to break. Instead, she stood taller. Serena quickly stepped forward. "Alpha Rider," she said urgently, "allowing a criminal to remain free sends the wrong message. She should be imprisoned until the council decides her punishment." Elders immediately agreed. "Lock her away. She cannot be trusted. Imprison her before she escapes." Alpha Rider gave a single nod. "Guards," he commanded coldly, "take Ava Nightshade to the dungeon. She will remain there until sunrise when the council determines her fate." Warriors moved toward her. Ava closed her eyes. This was how it would end. Alone, disgraced, abandoned, Yet just as the guards reached for her, a deafening explosion shook the entire hall. Boom! The massive entrance doors burst inward with such force that several warriors were thrown backward. A violent gust of wind swept through the chamber, extinguishing half the torches instantly. Panic erupted, swords were drawn, warriors shifted into defensive positions. Then, without warning, every wolf inside the hall froze. An overwhelming pressure descended upon the gathering, ancient, terrifying. Dominant, even Alpha Rider instinctively stepped backward. At the shattered entrance stood a tall figure cloaked in black, silver eyes burned within the darkness. The air itself seemed to bow before him. One by one, powerful alphas throughout the hall dropped to their knees, fear spread like wildfire. Because everyone recognized the man standing before them, the supreme Lycan King, Kale Draven, the ruler whose name alone could silence entire kingdoms. No one understood why he had come. No one dared ask. Kale's icy gaze slowly swept across the gathering before finally settling on Ava. The moment his eyes met hers, time seemed to stop. A strange energy exploded throughout the hall. Ava gasped. Her pendant suddenly began glowing beneath her dress. The Lycan King's expression darkened. Then, in a voice that carried enough authority to shake every soul present, he uttered words that would forever alter Ava's destiny. "No one touches my mate." Moment the supreme Lycan King uttered those impossible words, every person inside the gathering hall stared at Ava Nightshade as though they had never truly seen her before. Mate. The word echoed relentlessly inside her mind. Ava could barely breathe. Her heart pounded violently against her ribs while countless questions stormed through her thoughts. Why would the most feared ruler in the werewolf world claim an insignificant Omega healer as his mate? Why had her pendant suddenly begun to glow? And why did those silver eyes standing across the hall feel hauntingly familiar? Long before this night turned her world upside down, Ava Nightshade had lived a life most wolves would have considered forgettable. At 22 years old, she possessed neither rank nor status. She held no noble bloodline that anyone knew of. She had no powerful family willing to defend her. She was simply the orphaned healer of the Silver Crescent Pack. Or at least, that was what everyone believed. Ava had arrived at the Pack territory 16 years earlier. No one knew exactly where she had come from. On a stormy winter night, hunters returning from patrol discovered a terrified little girl wandering alone in the forest. She had been no older than 6 years old, barefoot, frightened, and barely conscious from exhaustion. Wrapped tightly around her tiny neck had been a peculiar silver pendant shaped like a crescent moon. There had been no sign of her parents, no tracks, no scents, nothing. The elders searched for months. No neighboring pack reported missing children. No rogue settlements recognized her description. Eventually, the investigation ended. The child remained. The mystery endured. Although Alpha Rider's late father allowed Ava to stay within pack borders, many members never truly accepted her presence. She had no family name, no known lineage. No wolf had ever manifested during her first shift ceremony. That single fact condemned her in the eyes of many. Among werewolves, strength defined worth. A wolfless Omega occupied the lowest place imaginable. Yet despite years of ridicule, Ava refused to become bitter. Instead, she devoted herself to helping others. When she turned 15, the elderly pack healer noticed something unusual. Ava possessed an extraordinary understanding of medicinal herbs. She could identify rare healing plants hidden deep within dangerous territories where experienced warriors often became lost. Even more remarkable, patients under Ava's care recovered with astonishing speed. Broken bones mended in days. Deep wounds closed overnight. Deadly fevers vanished after a single treatment. At first, everyone celebrated her gift. The pack praised her dedication. Warriors sought her assistance after battles. Pups adored her gentle nature. Elders frequently requested her company. For a brief period, Ava believed she had finally found a place where she belonged. Those precious moments did not last. As years passed, whispers began spreading throughout the territory. Some claimed her abilities were unnatural. Others insisted dark magic flowed through her blood. Several elders argued that no wolfless Omega should possess healing talents surpassing trained physicians. Fear slowly replaced gratitude. Suspicion replaced admiration. Even acts of kindness became reasons for criticism. When warriors recovered too quickly, people whispered. When patients survived impossible injuries, questions emerged. Whenever unexplained events occurred inside pack borders, accusing eyes inevitably turned toward Ava. Luna Serena encouraged those fears. Publicly, the Luna appeared compassionate. Privately, she viewed Ava as a threat. Serena could never understand why pack members continued seeking Ava's counsel despite her low rank. Nor could she tolerate the quiet respect Ava earned through years of service. The Luna's resentment intensified after Alpha Rider officially ascended to leadership. Although Rider rarely acknowledged Ava publicly, Serena noticed subtle things. The Alpha trusted Ava's judgment during emergencies. He often assigned her responsibility for treating injured warriors personally. On several occasions, Serena caught Rider watching Ava from a distance with an expression she could never fully decipher. That alone was enough. From that moment onward, Serena ensured Ava never forgot her place. Additional duties appeared regularly. Meals were withheld as punishment for minor mistakes. Social gatherings deliberately excluded her. False rumors spread throughout the territory. Ava endured everything in silence. Not because she lacked courage, because she understood survival sometimes demanded patience. Still, there was one burden Ava never shared with anyone. For years, she had hidden something impossible. Whenever someone suffered severe injuries, strange warmth gathered beneath her skin. Instinct guided her hands. Energy she could neither explain nor control flowed naturally through her touch. More than once, patients hovering near death survived after Ava secretly used this mysterious power. She never spoke about it. She never experimented with it openly, because deep inside she feared the truth. If the pack already distrusted her healing skills, what would happen if they discovered she possessed abilities unlike anything ordinary werewolves could wield? That fear became even greater after the dreams began. The first dream came shortly after her 18th birthday. She found herself standing beneath an enormous silver moon in an unfamiliar palace courtyard. Ancient towers surrounded her. Strange symbols glowed beneath her feet, and standing several steps away was a man she had never met, tall, powerful, wrapped in darkness. His silver eyes held an intensity that both terrified and comforted her. He never spoke, he simply watched her. Every dream ended the same way. The mysterious stranger would slowly reach toward her. Just before their fingers touched, Ava always awakened. Over the years, the dreams became more frequent, more vivid, more impossible to ignore. Tonight, when the doors to the gathering hall exploded open and the supreme Lycan King stepped inside, Ava's entire body turned cold, because she recognized those eyes immediately. They were the same eyes that had haunted her dreams for 4 long years. And judging by the shock briefly crossing Kale Draven's face, he recognized her too. The question that now terrified Ava more than anything else was painfully simple. How could that be possible? And why did it feel as though destiny itself had finally come to collect a debt long overdue? Long before the supreme Lycan King shattered the doors of the Silver Crescent Pack, another door had quietly opened behind closed walls. It was the door to betrayal, and the woman who pushed it open wore the smile of an angel. Luna Serena had always been admired throughout the territory. Blessed with extraordinary beauty, she carried herself with elegance that commanded attention wherever she went. Her golden hair flowed like silk, her graceful manners captivated guests, and her soft voice often concealed the sharpness hidden beneath. To outsiders, Serena embodied everything a Luna should be: compassionate, refined, devoted. Yet appearances often hid dangerous truths. Behind her carefully crafted image lived a woman consumed by jealousy. Serena had spent years building her influence within the Silver Crescent Pack. She controlled the household staff, maintained close relationships with influential elders, and ensured that every important decision passed through her hands. Power had become her identity. Anything that threatened that power immediately became an enemy. Unfortunately for Ava Nightshade, she had unknowingly become one of those enemies. At first, Serena barely acknowledged the orphaned healer's existence. A wolfless Omega posed no threat, or so she believed. Everything changed shortly after Ryder ascended as Alpha. Although Ryder rarely displayed personal affection toward anyone, Serena gradually noticed something deeply unsettling. Whenever warriors returned wounded from patrols, Ryder always requested Ava personally oversee their treatment. During periods of food shortages, he quietly ensured the healers' quarters received additional supplies. On several occasions, Serena discovered him standing silently outside the infirmary after midnight, watching Ava care for injured pack members. He never entered. He never spoke, he simply watched. That was enough. Serena recognized the danger immediately. Respect was a powerful thing, and Ava had earned it without rank, wealth, or influence. The pack trusted her, pups adored her, warriors defended her whenever rumors surfaced. Even elders occasionally sought her advice regarding medicinal remedies. Serena could tolerate many things. Being overshadowed was not one of them. Over time, subtle acts of cruelty began. Additional chores mysteriously appeared on Ava's schedule. Important medical supplies frequently disappeared. Servants received private instructions to avoid assisting her. Whenever mistakes occurred inside the healing wing, blame somehow found its way to Ava. Despite everything, the young healer never complained. Her silence only infuriated Serena further. Then, 3 days before the annual Moon Blessing Gathering, an opportunity presented itself. The Luna's sacred heirloom vanished. The necklace held enormous significance within the Silver Crescent pack. Passed down through generations, the jewel symbolized the authority of the Luna bloodline. Its disappearance immediately threw the entire territory into chaos. Searches began at once. Warriors inspected every chamber. Servants underwent questioning. The atmosphere inside the pack house grew tense. Serena publicly expressed grief. Privately, she celebrated. Because the necklace had never truly disappeared, she had hidden it herself. Late that night, while Ava remained occupied treating wounded patrol members, one of Serena's loyal attendants secretly entered the healer's quarters. The heirloom was carefully placed beneath a loose floorboard beside Ava's bed. The trap had been set. The following morning, Serena demanded a full investigation before the entire pack. By sunset, hundreds had gathered inside the ceremonial hall. Ava stood at the center, utterly unaware that her fate had already been decided. Search every room, Serena instructed tearfully. The guards obeyed. Minutes later, one warrior emerged carrying a velvet box. Shock spread instantly throughout the chamber. The sacred heirloom had supposedly been discovered inside Ava's room. Ava stared at the necklace in complete disbelief. Her blood turned cold. "I don't understand," she whispered. "You expect us to believe this is coincidence?" Elder Marcus demanded. "Never seen that necklace before," Ava insisted desperately. "Someone placed it there." Several pack members scoffed openly. Convenient explanation. Criminals always deny their actions. She should have been expelled years ago. Each accusation struck harder than the last. Ava searched the crowd. Faces she had known for years now looked at her with disgust. Wolves whose lives she had saved refused to meet her eyes. Not one person defended her. Not one. Then her gaze settled on Alpha Ryder. He stood upon the raised platform beside Serena, expression unreadable. Ava felt a small spark of hope. Surely Ryder would listen. He knew her, he understood who she was. For years they had grown up under the same roof after his father adopted her into the pack. He had witnessed her sacrifices. He had seen her spend nights without sleep while treating injured warriors. He knew she would never steal. Slowly, Ava stepped forward. "Alpha," she said softly, her voice trembling despite her efforts to remain composed. "Please, you know me, I would never do this." The entire hall waited. Ryder remained silent, his jaw tightened. For one painful moment, uncertainty flickered across his face. Serena noticed immediately. She moved closer to him. "My Alpha," she whispered, ensuring everyone heard the sorrow in her voice. "I considered Ava a sister. Her betrayal wounds me deeply, but justice must prevail." Hesitation vanished. Ryder's expression hardened. Duty replaced emotion. "Evidence speaks for itself," he announced. Ava felt something inside her begin to break. "No," she whispered. "Please listen to me." Elder Marcus struck the floor with his staff. "Accused has already spoken." Another elder rose. "Stealing from the Luna constitutes treason. Punishment must be severe." Voices erupted throughout the chamber. "Banish her. Her away. Strip her of pack protection." Insults rained down from every direction. Ava stood alone amid the storm, years of loyalty, years of sacrifice, years of service. None of it mattered. Tears burned behind her eyes, yet she refused to let them fall. Instead, she lifted her head and looked directly at Ryder. "I have served this pack all my life," she said quietly. The sincerity in her voice briefly silenced the crowd. For a heartbeat, uncertainty returned. Then Ryder delivered the words that shattered whatever remained of Ava's heart. "And now you will pay for your betrayal." Before anyone could react, he descended from the platform. The distance between them disappeared in seconds. Ava barely had time to register the fury in his eyes. The slap came without warning. The force sent her stumbling backward. Gasps echoed throughout the hall. Pain exploded across her cheek. But the physical wound meant nothing compared to the devastation spreading through her soul. Because in that moment, Ava realized something far worse than being falsely accused. The people she had dedicated her life to had already condemned her long before this day ever began. And someone in that hall was smiling, hidden behind a mask of grief, waiting to watch Ava Nightshade disappear forever. The instant Alpha Rider's hand struck Ava Nightshade, something ancient awakened. No one inside the Silver Crescent Gathering Hall noticed it at first. They were too consumed by outrage, condemnation, and the satisfaction of watching an accused Omega finally fall. Yet beyond the borders of the pack territory, far beyond the towering pine forests and frozen rivers, an invisible force had already begun moving. The air changed. The wind changed. Even the moon itself seemed to dim. Standing at the center of the ceremonial hall, Ava pressed a trembling hand against her burning cheek. The sting of Ryder's slap still lingered, but another sensation had suddenly taken its place: warmth. A strange, powerful warmth spread from the silver pendant resting against her chest. At first, she assumed the pain and humiliation had clouded her senses. Then the pendant began to pulse, once, twice. Again, Ava's eyes widened. For years, the mysterious heirloom left by her mother had remained nothing more than a beautiful piece of jewelry. It had never glowed. It had never reacted to anything, until now. Before she could understand what was happening, the entire palace trembled violently. A deafening rumble echoed through the walls. Several chandeliers swayed overhead. Gasps erupted throughout the chamber. What was that? Is the palace under attack? Protect the Alpha. Warriors immediately reached for their weapons. Elders exchanged frightened glances. A second tremor followed, stronger, more violent. The massive wooden doors positioned at the far end of the hall suddenly burst inward with explosive force. Boom! Splintered wood scattered across the polished floor. A powerful gust of icy wind surged into the chamber, extinguishing dozens of torches instantly. Darkness swallowed half the room. Panic spread. Several pack members screamed. Children clung to their parents. Even seasoned warriors instinctively retreated. Then they saw them. One by one, heavily armored figures entered through the shattered entrance. Lycan warriors. Their presence alone radiated overwhelming dominance. Each warrior stood well over 6 feet tall, clad in black armor engraved with ancient silver runes. Their movements were precise, disciplined, and utterly silent. Scars marked many of their faces. Their eyes carried the unmistakable look of wolves who had survived countless battles. These were not ordinary soldiers. These were the king's shadow guard, the most feared military force in existence. Stories about them circulated throughout every werewolf territory. Entire rogue armies had disappeared after crossing paths with the Shadow Guard. Rebellious alphas surrendered rather than challenge them. No pack wished to attract their attention, because where the Shadow Guard traveled, their ruler was never far behind. A suffocating pressure descended upon the hall. Power rolled through the chamber like a living storm. One by one, every alpha present dropped to one knee. Some lowered their heads immediately. Others hesitated for only a second before surrendering to instinct. Even Alpha Rider bowed, not out of respect, out of necessity, because every wolf present understood one terrifying truth. A Lycan King had entered their territory, and there was only one Lycan King alive. Kale Draven's silence consumed the hall. The temperature seemed to plummet. Then he appeared tall, imposing, terrifying. Kale Draven stepped through the ruined doorway with the quiet confidence of a ruler who had never known defeat. A long black coat draped over broad shoulders, moving gently with each measured step. Silver embroidery adorned the fabric, depicting ancient symbols few living wolves could recognize. His features were striking: sharp cheekbones, dark hair, a face carved by centuries of leadership and warfare. Yet nothing about him drew attention more than his eyes: silver, brilliant silver, the exact same shade Ava had seen countless times within her dreams. The moment she looked at him, her breath caught. No, it couldn't be. Impossible. For 4 years, those silver eyes had haunted her sleep. Night after night, she had dreamed of a mysterious stranger standing beneath moonlight, reaching toward her across an endless distance. And now he stood before her, real, alive, watching her. Kale's expression remained unreadable, cold, controlled, completely devoid of emotion. Legends described Kale Draven as merciless. Ancient records claimed he had ruled for centuries. Enemies called him the Wolf of Winter because wherever he brought war, kingdoms froze in fear. He was ruthless to those who threatened his people, unforgiving toward traitors, and utterly indifferent to the suffering of his enemies. No one understood why such a ruler had come to the Silver Crescent Pack. No summons had been issued. No diplomatic meeting had been scheduled. His presence made no sense. Kale ignored everyone. He paid no attention to Alpha Rider. He did not acknowledge Luna Serena. He overlooked the elders. His gaze moved slowly across the hall, searching, hunting, until it found Ava. The world seemed to stop. A visible shock crossed Kale's face. It vanished almost instantly, replaced by something far more dangerous: recognition. Ava's heart hammered violently. The pendant around her neck glowed brighter. Warm energy surged through her body. The dreams, the silver eyes, the strange pull she had felt all her life. Suddenly, none of it felt accidental. Kale began walking straight toward her. Each footstep echoed throughout the silent chamber. No one dared interfere. No one dared breathe. Fear gripped the entire gathering. Ava's pulse raced. What did he want? Had he come because of the theft accusation? Had the Silver Crescent Pack somehow offended the Lycan Kingdom? If so, everyone was doomed. Kale stopped directly in front of her. For the first time in years, Ava found herself unable to look away from another person's eyes. Something ancient stirred between them, something powerful, something inevitable. She expected anger, judgment, punishment. Instead, Kale slowly lifted one hand. The entire hall held its breath. His fingers gently brushed the injured cheek Ryder had struck moments earlier. The instant skin touched skin, an explosion of energy erupted between them. A brilliant silver light flooded the chamber. A powerful gust swept through the hall. Several wolves gasped as the unmistakable scent of a completed mate bond filled the air. Ava felt warmth rush through every part of her being. Pain disappeared. Fear vanished. An overwhelming sense of belonging wrapped around her soul. At the same moment, Kale's usually emotionless expression softened almost imperceptibly. Centuries of solitude, centuries of waiting, ended in a single heartbeat. Shock rippled across the room. Luna Serena's face drained of color. Alpha Rider stared in disbelief. The elders looked horrified. Because everyone understood exactly what had happened. The impossible had occurred. The supreme Lycan King had found his fated mate, and she was the Omega they had just condemned. Kale turned slowly toward the gathering. Silver eyes swept across every face. When he spoke, his voice carried enough authority to shake the very foundation of the palace. "She is my mate." Silence followed. Then chaos erupted. The silence lasted only 3 seconds. Then the gathering hall exploded into chaos. Shocked voices rose from every corner of the chamber as disbelief swept through the Silver Crescent Pack like wildfire. That can't be possible. An Omega cannot be the Lycan King's mate. There must be some mistake. Fear, confusion, outrage, and disbelief collided all at once. The elders immediately began arguing among themselves. Warriors exchanged nervous glances. Several pack members backed away from Ava as though seeing her for the very first time. At the center of the storm stood Alpha Rider, frozen, motionless, unable to process what had just happened. His eyes remained fixed on Ava, on the woman he had humiliated moments earlier. The woman the supreme Lycan King had just claimed before the entire pack. None of it made sense. Ava was an orphan, a wolfless omega, an insignificant healer. How could someone like her possibly be connected to the most powerful ruler in existence? Beside him, Luna Serena's elegant composure shattered completely. The color drained from her face. Panic flashed across her eyes. Everything had gone wrong. Ava was supposed to be imprisoned, disgraced, exiled. By sunrise, she was meant to disappear from the pack forever. Instead, the Lycan King himself had arrived. And worse, he had publicly claimed her. Serena's hands trembled beneath her sleeves. Years of carefully maintained control were slipping through her fingers. "No," she whispered under her breath. "This cannot be happening." Before she could gather herself, Elder Marcus stepped forward. With visible effort, the elderly wolf straightened his shoulders and addressed Kale. "Your Majesty," he began cautiously, "perhaps there has been some misunderstanding. The accused stands guilty of stealing the sacred Luna heirloom. Surely a criminal cannot be your destined mate." Entire hall quieted. Every eye shifted toward Kale Draven. The Lycan King slowly turned. One glance from those silver eyes was enough to make Elder Marcus regret speaking. Kale's expression remained unreadable, cold, ancient, terrifying. Without uttering a word, he extended his hand. One of his shadow guards immediately stepped forward carrying an ornate black case. Kale opened it. Inside rested an ancient scroll sealed with silver wax. The moment several elders recognized the crest stamped upon the seal, horror spread across their faces. It was the royal crest of the Lycan Kingdom, a symbol unseen within pack territories for generations. Kale spoke at last. "Heirloom you claim was stolen never belonged to the Silver Crescent pack." Hall fell silent once more. Alpha Rider frowned. "What do you mean?" he demanded. Kale's gaze shifted toward the velvet box containing Serena's necklace. That necklace was crafted nearly 500 years ago by the royal artisans of the Lycan court. Gasps erupted. Serena stumbled backward. "No," she whispered. Kale ignored her. "It was one of 3 ceremonial relics created exclusively for the daughters of the Lycan royal bloodline." Room descended into stunned silence. No one moved, no one breathed. Elder Marcus shook his head rapidly. "That is impossible. The heirloom has belonged to our Luna line for generations." "Then your ancestors either stole it," Kale replied coldly, "or someone gifted it under circumstances long forgotten." His words struck the elders like a physical blow. Kale turned toward Ava. For a brief moment, something softer entered his expression. "Bring me the pendant." Confused and overwhelmed, Ava slowly removed the silver crescent pendant she had worn since childhood. The instant Kale touched it, the entire chamber illuminated. Brilliant silver light exploded from the ancient jewelry. Runes appeared in midair. Symbols no one present could understand floated above the gathering hall. The sacred necklace inside the velvet box suddenly responded. It rose into the air. The heirloom and Ava's pendant drifted toward one another until they locked together perfectly, forming a single magnificent royal emblem. A collective gasp echoed throughout the chamber. Every elder stared in horror. Luna Serena looked as though she might collapse. Kale's voice cut through the silence. "Moon crest of House Draven." No one spoke, because everyone understood the implication. Ava's pendant was not ordinary, it was royal ancient, and impossible for an orphaned Omega to possess. Kale's silver eyes settled upon Ava. "You carry the blood of the Lycan royal family." The words shattered Ava's world. For years she had wondered about her parents, wondered why she possessed strange abilities, wondered why she never truly belonged anywhere. Now, standing before hundreds of witnesses, she learned the impossible. She might not be an orphan at all. She might be royalty. Questions flooded her mind. Who were her parents? Why had she been abandoned? Who had hidden her inside the Silver Crescent territory? And most importantly, who wanted her forgotten? Before Ava could speak, Kale extended his hand. "You will come with me." Command stunned everyone, including Ava. She looked around the hall, at the wolves she had spent 16 years serving, at the home she had desperately tried to belong to, at the faces now filled with shock and uncertainty. This place had given her shelter. It had also given her loneliness, humiliation, and betrayal. Tears threatened to surface, but Ava forced them back. Slowly she looked at Kale. For reasons she could not explain, his presence felt safe, familiar, as though some forgotten part of her soul had always known him. After a long silence, she nodded. "I will go." Luna Serena's eyes widened. "No," she blurted, realizing her mistake. She immediately composed herself. "Your Majesty," she said carefully, "surely further investigation should occur before taking her away." Kale's expression hardened. "I was not asking permission." Room instantly fell silent. Without another word, Kale placed his protective cloak around Ava's shoulders and turned toward the exit. The shadow guard formed around them. As Ava took her first step away from the Silver Crescent pack, something unexpected happened. Alpha Rider suddenly collapsed. A strangled cry escaped him. He fell to one knee, clutching his chest. Agony spread across his face. The pain was unbearable, raw, primal. His wolf howled furiously inside him. Images flashed through his mind. A younger Ava laughing in the training fields. Ava tending his wounds after battles. Ava standing beside him beneath the full moon years earlier. And then the truth struck. His wolf roared, "Mate." Ava Nightshade had always been his fated mate. Years ago, during a ceremony marking his ascension as future Alpha, Ryder had felt a faint bond forming. Young, ambitious, and desperate to strengthen his pack politically, he had ignored it. He convinced himself the connection was insignificant, incomplete, impossible. He buried the feeling. Over time, the bond weakened, until tonight. Tonight, watching another male claim her had shattered the barrier completely. Ryder finally understood. He had unknowingly rejected his own mate. The realization nearly destroyed him. He lifted his head. His broken voice echoed through the hall, but she did not turn around. For the first time in her life, Ava Nightshade walked away from the pack without looking back. And Alpha Rider knew with horrifying certainty that he might have just lost her forever. Ava Nightshade had spent her entire life surviving betrayal. Trust had never come easily to her. After everything that had happened inside the Silver Crescent Gathering Hall, she had expected many things from the Supreme Lycan King: interrogation, suspicion, perhaps even imprisonment until he uncovered the truth about her origins. Kindness had not been among those expectations. Yet as the enormous gates of the Silver Crescent pack disappeared behind them, Kale Draven did something that left Ava deeply unsettled. He asked for her permission. "We will stop whenever you wish to rest." A simple statement caught her off guard. A ruler feared by kingdoms had no reason to concern himself with the comfort of an unknown Omega. Still, Kale had spoken as though her opinion genuinely mattered. Ava did not know what to make of it. The journey toward the Lycan Kingdom would take several days by horseback through ancient forests, mountain passes, and territories untouched by ordinary packs. Kale's shadow guard traveled in disciplined silence. No one questioned him. No one challenged his decisions. No one dared. Ava rode beside Kale beneath a sky painted with fading shades of gold and crimson. Neither spoke. The silence between them felt strange, not uncomfortable, merely unfamiliar. Every few minutes Ava caught herself glancing toward him. Each time she quickly looked away. The Lycan King remained as intimidating as ever. His expression rarely changed. His posture remained rigid. His silver eyes constantly scanned their surroundings. He looked less like a ruler and more like a predator guarding something precious, or someone. That realization only increased Ava's unease. She had been claimed as his mate before an entire pack, yet she knew almost nothing about him. She certainly had no intention of surrendering her trust so easily, not again. As darkness settled across the forest, the travelers finally stopped beside a rushing river. Camp preparations began immediately. Large tents appeared. Perimeter guards took positions. Fires were lit. Ava quietly moved away from the others and sat near the water's edge. The events of the past day weighed heavily upon her. Everything she believed about herself had changed. An orphan, an Omega, a healer. Now she was apparently the Lycan King's mate and possibly connected to a royal bloodline she had never known existed. The truth felt impossible. Footsteps approached behind her. Ava did not need to turn around. She already knew who it was. Kale stopped several feet away. He made no attempt to move closer. "Understand if you have questions," he said. Ava stared at the river. "Have thousands." Kale remained silent. "I don't know you," she finally continued. "You arrived without warning, declared me your mate, and took me away from the only home I have ever known." A faint shadow crossed Kale's expression. "You had already been abandoned by that home." Honesty of his response startled her, because he was right. Ava lowered her eyes. For several moments, neither spoke. Then Kale surprised her once again. You owe me nothing, Ava. She looked at him. If after learning the truth you choose to leave, I will not force you to remain beside me. Ava blinked in disbelief. Everything she knew about powerful men suggested they took whatever they desired. Yet Kale was offering her freedom. It made no sense, and somehow that frightened her even more. The following morning, the journey resumed. Towering mountains rose in the distance as the group traveled deeper into wilderness untouched by pack settlements. By midday, the atmosphere changed. The shadow guard grew tense. Hands drifted toward weapons. Kale's expression darkened. Ava immediately noticed. "What is it?" she asked. "Stay close to me." Those 4 words had barely left his mouth when chaos erupted. A blood-curdling howl shattered the silence. Dark figures burst from the trees, rogues. At least 20 wild-eyed and heavily armed, they attacked without hesitation. The forest exploded into violence. Steel clashed. Wolves roared. Shadow guards immediately engaged the attackers. Ava instinctively moved backward. Then she saw it. A rogue had slipped past the warriors, straight toward her. Everything happened in seconds. The attacker lunged. Ava froze. Before the rogue could reach her, Kale moved. One moment he stood beside his horse, the next he was in front of her. The force of his strike sent the rogue crashing through 3 trees. The man never stood again. Kale remained positioned between Ava and danger. Silver eyes burned with deadly fury. A low growl escaped him, ancient, terrifying, possessive. No one touched his mate. The surviving rogues fled almost immediately. Even they understood certain enemies could not be challenged. Once the battle ended, Kale turned toward Ava. "Are you injured?" She shook her head. Only then did Kale visibly relax. Later that evening, while treating several wounded shadow guards, Ava rolled up her sleeves. Kale happened to walk past. His gaze abruptly stopped. Long, pale scars covered Ava's arms, old scars, years old, some thin, others far more severe. Kale's expression hardened instantly. "Who did that?" Ava immediately lowered her sleeve. "It doesn't matter. Matters to me." His voice remained calm, which somehow made it more dangerous. Ava looked away. Accidents happen. Kale studied her quietly. Neither of them believed that explanation. He said nothing further, but something changed. From that moment onward, Kale rarely allowed Ava out of his sight. If she walked through camp, he noticed. If she wandered too far, he followed. If another male lingered too long during conversation, Kale's icy gaze ended the interaction quickly. The shadow guards observed these developments with barely concealed amusement. Ava noticed as well. "You do realize I can walk 10 feet without supervision," she remarked one afternoon. Kale looked completely unbothered. "Can you defend yourself against assassins, rogues, or political enemies?" "No." "Then my concern remains justified." Ava opened her mouth, then closed it. Arguing with the Lycan King was becoming increasingly difficult, especially when part of her secretly appreciated his protectiveness. Several nights later, heavy rain forced the travelers to shelter inside an abandoned hunting lodge. The small building offered limited space. As a result, Ava and Kale found themselves seated beside the same fire. Thunder echoed outside. Warm orange flames danced between them. For the first time since leaving Silver Crescent territory, conversation came naturally. Ava learned Kale had ruled for nearly 2 centuries. She learned he rarely visited packed territories personally. She learned he preferred solitude. Then she asked the question that had haunted her since their meeting. "Lived for centuries." Kale nodded. "Yes." Ava hesitated. "You never found another mate?" Something unreadable crossed his face. "No." Answer surprised her. "There were no suitable candidates." Kale's silver eyes met hers. "There was never anyone else." Heat unexpectedly rushed to Ava's cheeks. She quickly looked toward the fire. At that exact moment, both reached for the same cup resting beside the flames. Their hands touched. A simple accident. Nothing more. Yet the contact sent warmth racing through both of them. Neither immediately pulled away. The world outside faded. Rain continued falling. The fire crackled softly. And for several suspended heartbeats, they simply looked at one another. No words were spoken. None were necessary. Because somewhere between danger, secrets, and uncertainty, the walls surrounding Ava's heart had begun to crack. And Kale Draven, the cold and feared Lycan King, was beginning to realize that protecting his mate might no longer be enough. He wanted her trust. He wanted her smile. Most dangerous of all, he was beginning to want her love. Ava Nightshade had survived cruelty before. She had endured years of whispers, rejection, and humiliation inside the Silver Crescent pack. She believed nothing could hurt her anymore. She was wrong. Because the moment the towering silver gates of the Lycan Kingdom came into view, Ava realized she was entering a world far more dangerous than the one she had left behind. The Kingdom of Draven was magnificent. Ancient castles rose from snow-covered cliffs like monuments carved by the moon itself. Massive towers pierced the clouds while enormous banners bearing the royal crest fluttered against the icy wind. Everything about the kingdom radiated power, strength, authority, history. As Kale's procession crossed the drawbridge, hundreds of warriors lined the pathway. Every soldier lowered their head, every servant knelt, every noble watched, and every pair of eyes eventually settled on Ava. Curiosity quickly transformed into disbelief. The whispers began immediately. "Is that her, the king's mate? She looks ordinary. She cannot possibly be royal." Ava lowered her gaze. Old insecurities returned at once. She suddenly felt painfully aware of her simple traveling clothes, her worn boots, and the fact that she knew absolutely nothing about royal customs. Kale noticed. Without speaking, he moved his horse slightly closer to hers. The gesture was subtle, yet everyone understood its meaning. The king's mate stood under his protection. No one openly challenged her. Not then. Unfortunately, silence rarely lasts within royal courts. Several hours later, after Ava had been shown to temporary chambers, the doors suddenly opened. 3 women entered. Servants immediately bowed. Ava rose from her seat. The woman leading the group was breathtaking. Tall and elegant, she possessed long silver blonde hair, flawless features, and an aristocratic grace impossible to ignore. Her crimson gown shimmered beneath the chamber lights, and expensive jewels adorned her neck and wrists. Everything about her announced status, power, privilege. Her expression, however, carried neither warmth nor kindness. This was Lady Selene Ravarin, daughter of the high noble house of Ravarin, one of the wealthiest families in the Lycan Kingdom. For years, nearly everyone had assumed Selene would eventually become queen. The expectation had seemed reasonable. She was beautiful, intelligent, noble-born. More importantly, she had spent years at Kale's side representing the crown during official events. Rumors of their future marriage had circulated throughout the kingdom for almost a decade. Then Ava arrived. Everything changed overnight. Selene slowly approached. Cold blue eyes examined Ava from head to toe. The scrutiny felt less like observation and more like judgment. "So," Selene said softly, "you are the girl." Ava remained polite. "My name is Ava." Selene smiled. The expression never reached her eyes. "Of course it is." Silence stretched. The atmosphere inside the room became increasingly uncomfortable. Finally, Selene circled Ava slowly. "I must admit," she continued, "the kingdom expected someone rather different." Ava said nothing. Selene stopped directly before her. "King has ruled for centuries. Many believed his mate would be extraordinary." Her gaze dropped intentionally toward Ava's simple dress. "Instead, he returns with a wolfless outsider." Insult landed exactly as intended. Ava's shoulders stiffened. Several servants looked away awkwardly. Selene smiled again. "You should not take offense. Royal life can be overwhelming for those unfamiliar with civilization." Ava met her gaze. "I have survived difficult circumstances before." The first time, irritation flickered across Selene's face. Without another word, she turned and left. But the message had been delivered. Ava was unwelcome. Unfortunately, Selene was not alone. Days passed. Court life proved exhausting. Nobles openly questioned Ava's worth. Some criticized her lack of noble education. Others questioned the legitimacy of the mate bond itself. Several influential families demanded formal investigations. Whispers followed Ava everywhere. She trapped the king. Cannot even shift. And Omega has no place beside the throne. Each remark reopened old wounds, yet Ava endured, just as she always had. Kale, however, did not. During one royal banquet, an elderly noble publicly questioned Ava's suitability. "Your Majesty," the noble said carefully, "surely tradition must still matter. The future queen should possess noble blood." The entire hall fell silent. Kale slowly placed his goblet upon the table. The sound echoed throughout the chamber. "You questioning my judgment?" "No, Your Majesty, I merely..." Then remained silent. Noble immediately lowered his head. No one challenged Ava again that evening. Still, Kale's protection only increased resentment within the court, especially from Selene. Determined to expose Ava as an impostor, Selene requested access to the royal archives. Ancient records preserved the history of every noble bloodline within the kingdom. Selene intended to prove Ava had no royal connection whatsoever. Kale permitted the search. Ava reluctantly accompanied them. The royal archives occupied an enormous underground chamber beneath the palace. Thousands of scrolls filled towering shelves, stretching endlessly into darkness. Ancient magic protected the collection. Only members of the royal bloodline could access certain sections. As scholars began their investigation, hours passed without success. Frustration grew. Selene's confidence returned. "You see," she remarked, "there is nothing." Then something extraordinary happened. As Ava walked past a sealed chamber, her moon-shaped pendant suddenly began glowing. The entire archive shook. Ancient runes illuminated across stone walls. A hidden doorway, untouched for centuries, slowly opened. Everyone froze. The chamber had remained sealed for over 20 years. No one had ever succeeded in opening it. Inside rested a single crystal chest. Upon its surface was engraved the crest of House Draven. Ava approached cautiously. The moment she touched the chest, it opened. Inside lay an old portrait. A woman stared back, beautiful, graceful, possessing Ava's exact eyes. Ava's breath caught, because she recognized her instantly. It was her mother. Beneath the portrait rested an ancient document. One of the royal historians carefully unfolded it. As he read, the color drained from his face. Kale immediately noticed. "What is it?" The historian looked up, trembling. "Your Majesty, these records identify Lady Alara Draven." Ava frowned. Who was she? Silence consumed the chamber. Then the historian spoke words that changed everything. Princess Alara was the younger sister of the previous Lycan King. Ava stared at him. "No," historian continued. 22 years ago, Princess Alara disappeared shortly after giving birth to a daughter. A terrible realization spread across the room. Selene slowly stepped backward. Kale's expression darkened. The historian's voice shook. "According to these records, the child was never found." He looked directly at Ava. "Your mother was not an Omega," could barely breathe. "She was the missing Lycan princess." Archive fell silent. Every noble present understood the truth immediately. Ava Nightshade was not an orphan. She was not a servant. She was not a nobody. By blood, lineage, and ancient law, Ava was the last surviving heir of House Draven, the rightful Lycan Queen. And somewhere beyond the palace walls, someone who had worked very hard to erase her existence had just become extremely afraid. The truth has a cruel way of returning, no matter how deeply it is buried, no matter how carefully it is hidden. And inside the Silver Crescent Pack, the truth was about to destroy lives. 3 days had passed since Ava Nightshade left the territory alongside the Supreme Lycan King. 3 days. Yet for Alpha Rider, it felt like an eternity. Sleep had abandoned him. Food held no taste. Every sunrise brought unbearable agony. Every night brought memories of Ava gathering herbs before dawn, Ava laughing softly while treating injured pups, Ava patiently caring for elderly pack members who rarely thanked her, Ava standing alone in the gathering hall while he condemned her before everyone. The mate bond punished him relentlessly. Now that his wolf had fully recognized Ava as his destined partner, separation felt like torture. The pain never stopped. It lingered inside his chest like a wound refusing to heal. Worse still, guilt accompanied it. For years, he had ignored the strange connection he felt whenever Ava was near. He had convinced himself that the protective instincts, the unexplained concern, and the constant need to ensure her safety meant nothing. Now he understood. His wolf had recognized its mate long ago. He simply refused to listen. And because of that refusal, he had committed the greatest mistake of his life. He had publicly humiliated the woman destined to stand beside him. The realization haunted him endlessly. Unfortunately, fate had not finished punishing him. On the 4th morning after Ava's departure, panic erupted inside the pack house. One of the household servants had disappeared. Normally, such an event would not alarm the territory. This servant, however, happened to be one of Luna Serena's personal attendants. More troubling still, She had vanished shortly after attempting to leave Pack lands in secret. Ryder immediately ordered a search. By sunset, the guards found her. She had not traveled far. Terrified and exhausted, the young servant was discovered hiding inside an abandoned hunting cabin near the eastern border. When brought before the Alpha, she collapsed into tears. "I never wanted to hurt Ava," she sobbed repeatedly. Ryder's heart sank. Something was terribly wrong. "What are you talking about?" he demanded. Servant trembled violently. "Luna Serena forced me." The entire room fell silent. Ryder slowly rose from his chair. "What did she force you to do?" The young woman lowered her head. "She ordered me to place the sacred heirloom inside Ava's quarters." Shock swept through the council chamber. Several elders immediately stood. "No," Elder Marcus whispered. The servant continued through tears. Lady Serena said no one would question the evidence if the necklace was found there. Silence descended, heavy, unforgiving. Ryder felt the blood drain from his face. "No," he said quietly. The servant nodded desperately. "It is true, Alpha." Elder Marcus helped her. Every eye turned toward the elderly council member. Marcus staggered backward. Fear filled his expression. "She promised additional influence within the council," he stammered. "I never intended for things to go this far." Rage exploded inside the chamber. Several council members immediately demanded punishment. Others stared at Marcus with disgust. For years, he had preached honor and justice. Yet he had condemned an innocent woman for personal gain. The truth spread throughout the territory within hours. The reaction was immediate. Warriors who once insulted Ava lowered their heads in shame. Mothers remembered how Ava had healed their children without asking for payment. Elders recalled countless nights she remained awake caring for the sick. Even those who rarely spoke in her defense could no longer deny reality. The healer they had condemned had been innocent all along. Meanwhile, Luna Serena found herself completely abandoned. When confronted, she initially denied everything. Then evidence emerged, witnesses came forward, additional servants confessed. Her deception collapsed. Cornered and desperate, Serena finally broke. "It was supposed to be simple," she screamed before the council. She was nothing, just an orphan, yet everyone admired her. Tears streamed down her face. Ryder. Confession shattered whatever remained of her carefully constructed image. No one defended her. No one pitied her. By unanimous decision, Serena was stripped of her title. She was exiled from the Silver Crescent territory before sunset. Elder Marcus received an even harsher punishment. Stripped of rank and authority, he was permanently removed from the council and banished alongside Serena. Justice had finally arrived. But for Alpha Ryder, punishment had only begun. Because another truth reached the Silver Crescent Pack that same evening. A royal messenger from the Lycan Kingdom arrived carrying official documents. The entire council gathered as the proclamation was read aloud. With every sentence, Ryder's despair deepened. The messenger announced that Ava Nightshade had been identified as Lady Ava Draven, daughter of Princess Alara Draven, last surviving heir of House Draven. By ancient law, she was recognized as the rightful Lycan Queen. Silence consumed the room. No one moved. No one breathed. The implications were staggering. Ryder had not merely humiliated an innocent Omega. He had publicly struck a royal princess, the future queen of the Lycan Kingdom, his mate. A crushing pain tore through his chest. He remembered the look in Ava's eyes after he slapped her, the heartbreak, the disappointment, the resignation. She had trusted him, and he had failed her in the cruelest possible way. For several long moments, Ryder remained completely still. Then he stood. "I am leaving for the Lycan Kingdom." Several council members looked alarmed. "Alpha, that is dangerous," one warrior warned. "The Lycan King may consider your actions an insult against the crown." Ryder's expression remained grim. "He has every right. You could be imprisoned." Ryder shook his head. "I do not care." Because there was something far worse than imprisonment, living with regret. For years, Ava had stood beside him while asking for nothing. She had offered loyalty, compassion, trust. He had repaid her with humiliation. He could not change what had happened. But he could face the consequences. As dawn approached, Ryder mounted his horse. The entire territory watched in silence. No one attempted to stop him, because everyone understood the Alpha was not traveling to the Lycan Kingdom as a ruler. He was traveling as a broken man chasing the woman he had betrayed, desperate for forgiveness, terrified that forgiveness might never come. And somewhere beyond distant mountains, inside a kingdom of silver and snow, Ava Nightshade remained completely unaware that the man who had shattered her heart was already riding toward her, with hope, with regret, and with the terrible realization that he might already be too late. Some wounds heal, others leave scars so deep that even time cannot erase them. Ava Nightshade understood that truth better than anyone. Ever since discovering her true identity, her world had changed beyond recognition. Servants now bowed whenever she entered a room. Nobles who once questioned her worth suddenly sought her favor. Royal advisors addressed her as Your Highness. Yet despite the luxury surrounding her, Ava found little peace, because titles could not silence painful memories. They could not erase years of loneliness. They could not mend a broken heart. Standing beside the enormous window inside her royal chambers, Ava stared across the snow-covered kingdom below. For the first time in years, she should have felt safe. Instead, she felt lost. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Before she could respond, Kale entered. As always, his presence immediately changed the atmosphere of the room. Power radiated effortlessly from him. Yet when his silver eyes settled on Ava, something gentler surfaced: concern. Over the past week, Kale had remained patient. He never pressured her, never demanded affection, never reminded her of the bond connecting them. Instead, he offered support, understanding, space, and somehow that only made Ava trust him more. You have not eaten, Kale observed quietly. Ava offered a faint smile. I was not hungry. Kale studied her carefully. You are troubled. Ava sighed. Everything has happened so quickly. She turned away from the window. 1 month ago, I believed I was an orphaned Omega healer. Now everyone expects me to become their queen. Pain flickered across her features. I don't even know who I truly am anymore. Kale approached slowly, close enough to offer comfort, far enough to respect boundaries. You are still Ava, he said simply. The words touched her more deeply than he realized. Before either could speak again, hurried footsteps echoed through the corridor. Moments later, the chamber doors burst open. A royal guard entered, visibly nervous. Your Majesty, he announced, bowing deeply. Alpha Rider of the Silver Crescent Pack has arrived. Silence followed. Ava froze, her heart immediately tightened. Kale's expression darkened. He requests an audience, the guard continued. For several seconds no one spoke. Finally, Ava nodded. Bring him. Throne room fell unnaturally quiet when Rider entered. Gone was the confident Alpha who once commanded the Silver Crescent Pack with unquestioned authority. The man walking across the polished floor looked exhausted. His clothes bore signs of long travel. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. Regret was etched across every feature. The moment Ryder saw Ava seated beside Kale, emotion overwhelmed him. She looked different, stronger, more radiant. Yet she remained unmistakably herself. For several painful moments, Ryder simply stared. Then, before the entire royal court, the Alpha dropped to his knees. Gasps spread throughout the chamber. An Alpha kneeling willingly was a rare sight. An Alpha kneeling before a former Omega was almost unheard of. Ryder lowered his head. Forgive me. His voice cracked. Years of pride shattered within those 3 words. Ava felt her chest tighten. Memories flooded her mind. The kindness Ryder had shown her during childhood. The years they spent growing up together. The moments when she secretly believed he might one day see her as more than a pack healer. Then came other memories, the accusations, the humiliation, the slap. The heartbreak. Ava remained silent, not because she wished to punish him, because she genuinely did not know what to say. Ryder slowly lifted his gaze. Truth has been revealed, he continued. Serena confessed everything. Elder Marcus admitted his involvement. Pain filled his expression. I failed you, Ava. Tears gathered in his eyes. I should have trusted you. The entire court watched. Many expected Ava to speak. She did not, because forgiveness was not simple, especially when trust had been destroyed. Sensing her discomfort, Kale stepped forward, instinctively, possessively. His presence beside Ava was immediate and unmistakable, silver eyes fixed upon Ryder. You have said what you came to say, Kale stated coldly. Ryder looked toward the Lycan King. For the first time, he fully understood what he had lost. Kale had protected Ava, believed in her, chosen her. Things Ryder should have done from the beginning. Slowly, Ryder lowered his head once more. If she finds happiness here, he whispered, that is all I ask. Ava's heart ached unexpectedly, because despite everything, part of her still mourned the bond they might have shared. Kale noticed. He noticed everything. Turning toward the royal court, Kale made a decision. Formal claiming ceremony will proceed tonight. Excited murmurs swept through the chamber. The ceremony would permanently seal the mate bond. It would also officially recognize Ava as Lycan Queen. Hours later, beneath the light of a magnificent full moon, the royal court gathered inside the moon sanctuary. Ancient silver flames illuminated the sacred chamber. Nobles, warriors, elders, and advisors stood silently around the ceremonial platform. Ava wore royal white. Kale stood opposite her, dressed in ceremonial black adorned with silver markings representing the ancient Lycan bloodline. The atmosphere felt almost magical. For the first time since arriving in the kingdom, Ava felt certain. Whatever the future held, she wanted to face it beside Kale. The high priest raised his staff. Moon goddess bears witness. Kale stepped forward. His silver eyes never left Ava. Slowly, he reached toward her. The entire kingdom seemed to hold its breath. One bite, one mark, one eternal bond, then stop. The desperate shout shattered the ceremony. Every head turned. An elderly figure rushed into the sanctuary, breathing heavily. It was Elder Thorn, keeper of the ancient records. Panic filled his weathered face. "Your Majesty," he gasped, "the marking cannot proceed." Instantly, tension exploded throughout the chamber. Kale's expression hardened dangerously. "Explain." The elderly scholar swallowed. "I have spent the past week examining Princess Alara's hidden archives." His trembling hands produced an ancient scroll. The records reveal information deliberately concealed from the kingdom. Ava's pulse quickened. "What information?" Elder Thorn looked directly at her. Before Princess Alara disappeared, she performed an ancient royal ritual. Sanctuary fell silent. A ritual that binds future heirs for protection. Kale stepped closer. "What are you saying?" The old scholar's next words froze every soul present. "Future Lycan Queen already carries an ancient bond." Shock rippled throughout the sanctuary. Ava stared at him. "That isn't possible." Elder's face turned pale. "Afraid it is." He slowly unrolled the ancient scroll. "There is another alpha." Complete silence. No one moved. No one breathed. Ryder looked up sharply. Kale's silver eyes darkened. Ava felt the world shift beneath her feet. Because somewhere beyond the borders of the Lycan kingdom, another alpha existed. An alpha mysteriously connected to her destiny. An alpha her mother had hidden from everyone. And if that unknown male discovered the truth first, the Lycan throne itself could be thrown into chaos. Who was this mysterious second alpha? Why had Ava's mother concealed his existence? Was someone secretly manipulating events from the shadows? And most terrifying of all, was Ava truly safe inside the kingdom she had only just begun to call home?